Promos are almost as important as in-ring work when it comes to wrestling, at least for me anyway. And today we've got Bad Mic Skills, Wrestling's Worst Talkers. If you guys like to support the original upload of the content, click the top link in the description. Otherwise, you can hang out with us and react to content live on Twitch by clicking the bottom link. We also got a free Patreon, free bonus content that you can't get on YouTube because it's too spicy. Copyright guide would shank me. With that being said, let's get right into the video.
One of the most important skills in a wrestler's arsenal is the ability to cut a good promo. Hell, it's this very skill which has helped to see the likes of Rowdy Roddy Piper, Macho Man Randy Savage, and The Rock rise to the top over the years. That said, not everyone can be as good on the mic as those performers. No, some fall on the opposite end of the spectrum in fact. But who are the biggest offenders when it comes to bad verbal skills?
I don't know!
Steve motherfucking
Well,
Black.
that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. And if we're going to start anywhere, let's do so with one of the biggest examples of someone who should never be let anywhere near a microphone, and that's Ahmed Johnson. Yes, over the course of his 3-year run with WWF between 1995 and 1997, the Pearl River powerhouse quickly developed a reputation as being someone who may have had the physical look.
The bouncing the pecs thing is always kind of crazy. The bouncing the pecs thing to me is kind of wild. I can't bounce my tits as hard as I try. Like I got to do like a whole bunch of fucking bouncing like actually my whole body thing. I can't just move the breasts by themselves. It's new to me. How do you guys do it? How do you guys do it?
Required to be a star, but who certainly didn't have the voice. And this was because every time he was given the opportunity to cut a promo, he did so in just about the most incomprehensible way imaginable. Seriously, go back and listen to any of Ahmed's interview segments and try to figure out what he's saying. But even if his words could be parsed, it likely wouldn't have meant much anyway, as the former Intercontinental Champion wasn't exactly Shakespeare at the best of times.
I don't take my Prozac anymore. And when I get off Prozac, brother, you don't know what might happen.
And this didn't exactly help him endear himself to his bosses in the long run because, as we all know, Vince McMahon's idea of sports entertainment requires someone be an all-rounder who can do more than just wrestle in the ring. In fact, being a good wrestler is way down there on the list of things he needs someone to be in order to turn them into a star. But then, it's not as if Ahmed Johnson was great in-ring either. No, with a reputation for hurting his co-workers, he couldn't exactly rely on this to give him any traction. So when you combine that with the fact that he couldn't cut a good promo either, it was only a matter of time till his run in New York came to an end.
He's a
Of course,
big boy.
he wasn't the only one working for WWF during the tail end of the New Generation era who had a habit of cutting promos so out there, few could figure out what the hell he was trying to say. And that's because elsewhere on the card at this point, Sid was also plying his craft.
I thought this video would probably have more examples of the poor mic skills, unfortunately. So I'm kind of just having to take the word for it that he's kind of ass on the mic, which sucks because I'm not like historically informed on Ahmed Johnson. That like never what's crossed my radar here on my side. Also, the Crows are talking about Sora versus Kratos, so yeah, I guess if you know anything about Kingdom Hearts or the God of War, he'd chime in the comments. That's what we're doing today. It's
That's right, he may have half the brain you do, but Sid Eudy never let this hold him back, because at times in 1996 and 1997, he'd somehow managed to transform himself into one of the most over baby faces Vince McMahon had on his roster. How had he done this? Well, through sheer force of charisma. That and a physique which looked like it was ripped straight out of the golden era. That said, he needed both these things in high volumes,
yeah, he's definitely
because one
built.
skill he certainly didn't have in his arsenal was the ability to cut a promo.
Because you are feared of me!
Sure, there is an ironic quality to
ah man. Ooh. He had emotion there. He had emotion there. He wanted to mean what he said. The words, they do things in his head that he can't seem to. can't seem to piece together the words.
To his rambling, incoherent speeches, which has allowed people to go back and enjoy them now, but back then, it wasn't as if these were doing much to increase his stock. No, with his constant botching of words and phrases, they only served to make him look like a fool, something which only became more apparent when he went to WCW and was there given even more leeway to
He
come
does
across
have
as stupid.
Hasselbrain.
You're only half the man that I am, and I have half the brain that you do.
Really, the only thing you can do is laugh, otherwise it would be too tragic to watch. And that's not something any performer wants you to be saying about their work. But then sometimes promos like this can go to a level even greater, where they're actually so bad they're good, and as a result, help to get someone over in a whole new way, as was the case with Scott Steiner.
Hard disagree. Scott Steiner is nowhere near worst promos. Hard disagree. Stop it. Cut that out. Take him off the list right now. Scott Steiner was skewering people. This snail is burning people alive.
Now, we're sure you're all aware of that promo. You know the one. It's the segment from an episode of Impact in 2008 where Big Papa Pump attempted to explain the math behind why he was going to dominate both Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle.
Somebody said the fucking math was correct, by the way. You gotta understand. He's playing 5D chess in chainmail. I will take no Scott Steiner slander.
At the upcoming Sacrifice pay-per-view. And while this created a moment so legendary, it's since become a full-blown meme, and the thing the former WCW World Champion is most known for amongst younger fans today. The fact remains, it's only scratching the surface of the wild promos he's provided us over the years. Yes, they say all men are created equal, but when you look at Scott Steiner, whenever he has a mic in his hand, you can see that statement is not true. You see, normally whenever a main event star gets time to talk, you've got a 50-50 chance of it being good. But then he's a genetic freak and not normal, so that means there's a 25% chance at best it's going to work out. And then there was the time he went off script and told WCW fans to change the channel and watch Steve Austin on Raw instead. Or the time his first audible words during his return to WWE in 2002 were him screaming, "Give me the mic," to some poor unseen figure. Honestly, we could sit here all day listing times Scott Steiner went buck wild during an interview and made unintentional magic in the process. Hell, he could probably fill about half a dozen videos himself with all the material he's given us over the years. But in the interest of making sure we give enough space to others, we'll move on for now and instead look at someone who was just as rambling and drug-fueled at their peak, and that's the Ultimate Warrior. Again, we likely don't need to explain to any of you how crazy Jim Hellwig's promo style was. That's not to say that he wasn't a big star back in his day, though. No, he was one of the biggest ever, in fact. After all, who can say they briefly dethroned Hulk Hogan as the top babyface of WWF during the Golden Era? Just the Warrior and Randy Savage, and that's it. But while the Macho Man was an all-time great on the stick, his Indiana-born counterpart sadly couldn't say the same, because whenever he was called upon to carry an interview segment, his method of doing so usually involved ranting in such an indecipherable way, you would have needed a translator if you wanted to understand him. And it was this way of doing things which gave us such gems as his WrestleMania 6 pre-match promo on Hulk Hogan, the one where he threatened to crash a plane into the ocean. Now, quite how this was supposed to help him win the match remains unclear, just as it remains unclear what he was trying to say during his never-ending speech when he showed up on Nitro in 1998 and there challenged the Hulkster to the rematch of the century. But one thing we can be sure of is that it made sense to him, even if it didn't to anyone else. No, when you're dealing with Jim Hellwig, you have to accept the fact that there's not going to be a lot of logic to the proceedings. And if you can do that, then there's at least a camp quality which can be taken from the thing. One person who it's very hard to see the fun in, though, when it comes to his abilities on the mic is our next subject, and that's because, well, he might have been a lethal weapon once the bell rang. When asked to speak, Steve...
Hey, you better watch your mouth. Better watch your mouth. Get. Hey, be careful. Hey, be careful. That's Steve motherfucking Blackman. You better be careful. Yeah. Even if the promo is an ass, you gotta say they good. Yeah. Even if the promo is ass, you gotta say they good. You might catch a kick to the knee.
Blackman had all the charisma of a plank of wood. Hell, you could argue even a plank of wood had more character, as Hacksaw Jim Duggan was able to get one of those over in a big way. But when it came to the Pennsylvania native, there would be no such similarities, as with his monotone voice and lack of anything interesting to say, every interview segment he had.
That's how you know he's a badass, though. Like, he ain't even talking crazy shit about that. He's like, yo, I'm here to beat ass. I'm here to beat ass. I'm about to just throw some kicks. You better duck or you get fun.
Had felt as painful as dental surgery. Sure, you could argue he never needed to cut promos, as his strengths were always in his legitimate martial arts skills which made him a fairly big deal on the Attitude Era WWF mid-card. But then, the fact that he had the likes of Ken Shamrock and Dan the Beast Severn to work with here, two people who complemented his style perfectly, certainly helped to make things easier for him in that area. The same could not be said for when he was asked to go up against performers
Once
such
again,
as
I'm going to plug Napoleon Blown Apart. If you have not seen his channel, check it out.
Workers, it meant Blackman was forced to try and go toe-to-toe. And when he did, such incidents only exposed his staggering lack of charisma all the more.
This way, this thing's got to end one way or not.
Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. Steve got workshopped out a little bit more. I'm not gonna say that was bad. It was, but I'm not gonna say it. He confused, right? Like, he's like, yo, what the fuck did I do? Yeah, come. What the fuck did I do?
Seriously, sometimes we're not entirely convinced the man wasn't just a very advanced robot who'd been programmed with all the skills of a dozen different Bruce Lee movies. That said, for as bad as he was, he did always have those in-ring skills to fall back on, and this at least meant the 6-time hardcore champion was able to make a nice career for himself, even if he couldn't talk worth a damn. It's just a shame the same couldn't be said for our next subject then, because despite him also having a legitimate history in shoot fighting, not only was Jake Hager unable to translate this into a wrestling ring.
What's that? He's like a big-ass little boy. He got a little boy face.
But he also wasn't able to cut a promo either. And this has been something which has followed the Fargo native all the way back since his days in WWE, where he wrestled under the name of Jack Swagger. Hell, so bad was he there that even when he briefly won the World Heavyweight title in 2010, you could have easily forgotten he was on screen at all at the best of times. Why was this? Well, whenever he was given a microphone, he instantly sucked all the energy out of the room with his anti-charisma. Even once his time with WWE came to a close, he'd continue to work in the industry by signing on the dotted line with All Elite Wrestling, where he currently serves as an enforcer to the trio of Daniel Garcia, Cool Hand Angelo Parker, and everyone's favorite hard-nippled man, the Canadian national treasure that is Daddy Magic, Matt Menard. And yes, you could argue that he's gotten one thing over during his time there with his I like this hat gimmick, but compared to other recent great AEW bits like Toni Storm morphing into a fallen Hollywood starlet, this is pretty small potatoes. Still, it could be worse because moving back to WWE for a moment, we find our next subject, someone who doesn't even have a hat to help get her over.
Yo, I know nothing about Tamina, bro. Like, what are you good for? They're like, and I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way, like, just like, what do you do?
No, all she has is a complete and utter lack of promo skills, and that's Tamina Snuka. Now, you could argue that it's unfair to include Tamina in this video, as she rarely, if ever, cuts promos. But to that, we'd say there's a reason she doesn't, and this reason is because she's so bad at them.
And if you don't shut up, I'm gonna make you look like Ellsworth.
A few moments later.
You need to be quiet or you're gonna start looking like Ellsworth.
Ani. Ani. Yo, send that bitch to the back, man. Send it to the back. Yes, come on, man. To kill her, man. Yeah, one job. Like, Ellsworth is like, yo, what did I do?
And what makes her lack of charisma in this area stand out all the more is that Tamina has often been paired up with great talkers, such as the time she served as an enforcer to AJ Lee for a while in 2013 and 2014. Then after that partnership ran its course, there was the period she spent alongside the likes of Lana, Sasha Banks, and Naomi, three people who, while they may not be the best to ever do it on the microphone, are still worlds better than anything the daughter of Jimmy Snuka can deliver. But then, her lack of speaking abilities haven't exactly been a death knell for her career, as with her basically serving as the heavy of the WWE's women's division for much of her time there, Tamina has largely been able to get by on being a silent powerhouse. It's just a shame the same thing can't be said for our next entry though, because with her being only 5'3" in height, there's little opportunity for Dana Brooke to serve in that role. So this has meant if she ever wanted to succeed.
Dude, at one point, I thought Dana Brooke was like really, really pretty, and I stopped watching for a while and came back, and I was like, is that Dana Brooke? Did she have like work done at some point? The shapeshifter is crazy. The shapeshifter is crazy. Don't do that. That's not nice.
In a major way then, she was going to have to learn how to cut a good promo. Unfortunately for the former fitness model, however, such a talent has never exactly been in her wheelhouse. No, whenever she's been in a segment which has called for her to talk, in fact, it's usually gone down like a lead balloon.
And I'm not a household
Or she has had
name
like 4 different
you.
faces so far.
It doesn't matter if it was her time on NXT or her subsequent spell on the main roster, Brooke just never seemed to pick it up when it came to that part of her craft. And that's a shame because with her not exactly being the best wrestler in the world either, it's pretty much guaranteed she'll never rise above the spot of mid-card player within the halls of New York. Sure, she's had her moments over the years, such as the time she joined up with Titus O'Neil and Apollo Crews to create Titus Worldwide, or the period where she became a 15-time holder of the illustrious 24/7 title. But she succeeded in those moments in spite of her lack of promo abilities because others were able to carry the weight for her. And outside of such times, she hasn't really done much of note at all, mostly just milled around in a death spot that is the women's tag team division, alongside a variety of partners such as Mandy Rose, Rhea Ripley, and Liv Morgan. But for as bad as she is when it comes to getting people interested and about through her words, even Dana Brooke doesn't hold the distinction of being the worst on the modern-day WWE roster. And that's because a certain former UFC bantamweight champion has her beat in this area. That's right, it's time to talk about Ronda Rousey. Now, no one is going to doubt Ronda's skills as a fighter.
Look as
There was
mean
a
as you
period
want.
where you
Where
could
your
have made a solid
promos at,
argument
girl?
she was the most dominating MMA performer in the world. And while figures such as Amanda Nunes or Valentino Shevchenko have gone on to surpass her in the long run, there's no doubt the baddest woman on the planet was the best at one time. That said, part of the reason she was able to become so successful during her time in UFC is that she wasn't really required to cut promos in order to get her fights over. No, while she would have to do the odd pre- and post-match interview, it wasn't like she was being asked to monologue about the backstory between her and her opponent here, something she would have to do once she signed on the dotted line with WWE in 2018. And when she did have to start cutting promos inside the squared circle then, her lack of skills in this department suddenly became apparent for all to see, and as such, a little bit of the aura she'd developed over the years dissipated. Of course, that's not to say she didn't find success in the world of pro wrestling. No, quite the opposite in fact, as during her rookie year there, Rousey showed herself to be something of a prodigy in the ring. Still though, whenever that microphone was handed to her and she spoke to the crowd in the most stilted and unnatural sounding of ways, it couldn't help but make things feel a little less special. And this was even more noticeable during her second run in 2022 and 2023, as by that point, with her in-ring work also having atrophied, all of her flaws only stuck out that much more. So maybe it's for the best she seems to have entered at least semi-retirement now, with her last bout against her real-life friend Shayna Baszler at August of the latter year's SummerSlam marking the final date of her current contract. Will she return again in the future? This remains to be seen. But if another former UFC champion schedule is anything to go by, we wouldn't be surprised if she does come back periodically. After all, there's a lot of money to be made in WWE, even if you're as bad a talker as Brock Lesnar is. Yes, we do have to preface this one by saying that during his current run in Vince McMahon's promotion, the Beast's verbal skills have improved somewhat, at least to the point he no longer needs Paul Heyman as a mouthpiece. That said, during his initial run in the early 2000s, this was not the case, as back then, even if he looked like the Incredible Hulk and moved like the Flash, all the goodwill such talents created frittered away whenever he was given a live microphone.
Yeah, that motherfucker was an athlete.
And that's because, like with everyone else we've discussed today, Brock's skills have never been as a talker. No, he's always been more about getting his point across using his fists, or if not them, then several well-placed German suplexes. So this is exactly why, back when he was a rookie still working on conquering the wrestling world, he was given a mouthpiece in the form of the former ECW owner, with that turning out to be the best thing possible for both men involved, as
Having Paul Heyman be your mouthpiece is definitely like, it's up there. Like, that's definitely the easy ride, right? Like, that's the rocket strapped to your back. They do not want you to fail.
it created a partnership for the ages, one which can still to this day stand tall amongst the likes
Granted,
of
there are
Bobby
some
Heenan and Nick
flops, like, I'm
Bockwinkel,
pretty sure
or
Curtis
Paul Bearer
Axel.
and The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Sadly though, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end eventually, and so, despite the pair reuniting for a few years following Lesnar's return to the ring in 2012, after a period spent dominating the world of MMA, come 2020, Heyman would move on to an all-new client in the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. Needless to say then, this left little room left in his date book for dealing with the 11-time world champion, and as a result, Brock was forced to learn how to carry himself in promo situations all of a sudden. Thankfully though, he's been able to do this to at least a satisfactory degree over the months since, meaning he technically shouldn't be in this video anymore, if we're being honest.
Damn, they really tried.
But then, given how bad
This
he
is
was
always a
initially,
Paul Heyman
maybe
guide.
his spot is still one which has been earned for a lifetime. And he's not the only one who has a lifetime pass onto the Bad Promo Hall of Fame, as our next subject also fills a full-time spot there on account of his routinely terrible mic work. Who are we talking about this time? Who else but the British Bulldog? That's right, Davey Boy Smith may have been a spectacular athlete, someone who could perform physical feats most other men his size wouldn't be able to dream of. And he may have had charisma to burn, which is exactly why to this day many British
that was a
wrestling fans
flex
still
if I
consider
ever
him
seen
to
one.
be their GOAT. Hell, so over was he during the transition period between the Golden and New Generation eras, he even got to main event 1992's SummerSlam show in front of a sold-out Wembley Stadium, with him there pinning his cousin Bret Hart to become the Intercontinental Champion to an absolutely catastrophic home field ovation. Sadly though, even at his heights, he just wasn't someone who could carry himself when it came to the other all-important element of his job, and this was getting things across during speaking segments. No, rather than be able to talk fans into watching him wrestle via his gift of the gab, Davey Boy arguably turned people off, if anything, during his promos, as they were so boring, so bereft of any kind of charm, you could be forgiven for wondering why Vince McMahon chose to push him at all. And it wasn't as if he got any better at this as his career progressed either.
You want a chance of me? Come on and take a piece of me.
It didn't
Oh, that hurt. Oh. Oh, man. Maybe that was like an exceptionally bad example. Ooh. Oh, shit. That's bad. Oh, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. Yeah, that's... Oof. Let's try that one more time.
chose to push him at all. And it wasn't as if he got any better at this as his career progressed either.
You want a chance of me? Come on and take a piece of me.
It didn't matter if it was
Yeah, that didn't make it any better that time. That made it worse, actually. Ooh. Fuck. We need Paul Heyman for him stats. We need somebody.
his subsequent spell in WCW or his later return to New York during the peak years of the Attitude Era, in fact. One thing about the Manchester native always remained constant, and this was that he couldn't cut a good promo at all.
Damn. Unfortunate. I wish we got a little bit more audio of the failed promos or something for this video. Understandable why they didn't though. The wrestling promotions are really protective of their footage and whatnot, so I get it. Pretty good list. Take Scott Steiner off there for me though. Don't do that. Don't do that at least. And Steve motherfucking Blackman. I need to look at some examples. But support the original creator of this content by clicking the top link in the description. Hang out with us live on Twitch by clicking the bottom link. This is one of the last few videos I'm doing in this batch of wrestling reactions, so if it underperforms, tough titty, I won't be doing any more on YouTube. That being said, I'll see you in the next video. Or not, don't be weird. Thank you so much to those of you that have made it over to the Patreon. I appreciate you.
I'm still hungry.